Fame, if you win it, comes and goes in a minute. Where's the real stuff in life to cling to long?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Boomer Pod podcast, where we interview movie and TV celebrities. Our guest today is stunt performer and action director, Spiro Razatos. Welcome, Spiro. Thank you for being with us today on Boomer Pod.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here.
What other career paths did you try before getting into film?
Well, not much, because I was 10 years old, and my dad, who was blind and lived in a basement, he was almost homeless. He took me on a trip that he could only take once a year. We always go to movies together. That's all we could ever do, is go see movies. And he would save up money to take me on a Greyhound bus every 6 months. And that was his big trip for the day, and we'd come back. So we went out to the mountains to go to a zoo for the day. It was this big special trip. And we get out of the Greyhound bus, and I see this marquee with Shaft playing. I was like 10 years old. And I said, Dad, we got to see Shaft. And he goes, okay, next time we go to the movies, we'll see Shaft. And I said, no, I have to see Shaft now. And he said, are you kidding me? I just saved all this money. This is our big trip. And I started crying, and I said, nope, I have to see it. And here he is, he's blind, and he believed in me. So he said, all right, we'll see Shaft. We won't do our trip. And we saw Shaft 3.5 times. And I said to myself, I want to be Shaft. So I spent all my childhood trying to be Shaft, thinking that I wanted to be this superhero that would jump off of buildings, or, chase bad guys, tackle them, car chases, all this stuff. And so that's what I did my whole career, going to school to be a gymnast, everything that I thought could do to make me Shaft. And it turned out that someone said, well, Shaft, cops don't do that in real life. Stuntmen do that in movies. So I said, okay, I'll just switch what I want to be, but I still practice the same stuff. And so I made a Super 8 movie of myself doing all these, stunts. And, I would make money doing these things people thought I'd be killed in, but I would plan them just like a stuntman. But they didn't know that I would spend weeks practicing these things at school, and then people would have to pay to watch me, and then I'd use that money and get an editing machine, a Super 8 thing. And I finally sent this movie to Greg Barnett and in Hollywood, and they saw it, and they said, come out here, kid. Well, you're destined to be a stuntman. And so that's what I did my whole life, is just everything I could to be Shaft, which turned me into a stuntman.
And how about the directing? How did that come to you?
Great question. Well, since I was directing my own stuff as a little kid, what I did is I realized, okay, I want to direct my own action. That way I can get it on film the way I think is the best way possible. So I got lucky. I started directing action in the 80s when just after I became a stuntman. I was very lucky, and I started to direct and coordinate and do the stunts myself. So back in the day, I would do everything. I would stunts, coordinate, and direct. And I started with small budget movies, and that's what gave me that opportunity. I gave up. I got a once in a lifetime chance to stunt double Robert De Niro in Midnight Run. And then I got a call to do a small $1 million movie for Bill Lustig. And I had a choice. Do I direct and coordinate a $1 million movie, or do I stay with one of the biggest actors in our time and have a great career as a stuntman? So I chose to walk away from De Niro and go do this little movie, and the rest was history. I got to direct all these little movies that I learned so much from. And that's, a lot of people said, well, you should be doing big budget movies back in the day, but I was getting paid to direct and coordinate and create and edit. I got to have my editor, all that stuff I was able to do for so many years and learned so much.
Now, you've coordinated and directed a couple of box office billion-dollar hits. Let me mention both of them that I have. Captain America, Civil War, 2016, and they grossed $1.5 million. And the other one is The Fate of the Furious, another billion-dollar hit of $1.2 billion. What can you tell me about those two features?
Yeah, that's great. The first one was like you said, over $1 billion for Captain America. I was very lucky. I got a call to get an interview for that show with the Russo brothers, and they didn't know me. They just liked my work. And I'll never forget what made that so special. The big sequence in that, normally a director will say, here's the sequence. I want the car to do this, come up with some great stuff, and we work together. But in this case, they showed me some real footage of a chase that was done in Brazil. And they loved that chase. It was a real police chase because it went from speed to traffic to obstacles to the cops trying to get out of the cars and catch this guy. So it had these layers that you normally don't see. And they liked the idea that there was all this congestion. The car couldn't get away from all this, but found a way to get away. So they said, what can you do that has this kind of a theme to it? And so that's why that chase with Fury had that feel where he went from being attacked to getting away with high speed chase to being trapped in traffic, to have to move his way away from all this congestion and guys coming out of the cars and shooting at him, all the way to the end where he, takes out the cop cars with this big trash dumpster truck. So that was inspired by a real chase in Brazil. And it was great that the Russo brothers were able to see this and just say, how do we make our chase like from this? And it was awesome. It was awesome to get that kind of thing.
Go ahead.
No, it was just awesome that it was not the typical way of doing a chase. So, my hat's off to them. That's why they're as great as they are.
Now, you've performed across a number of different genres. Are there any favorites?
Like from Skull Island, do you mean, to Fast, just a variety of different kinds of movies, right? Comedies. Yeah. Because I loved movies and I've been asked to do a lot of car sequences, and I actually love doing things that aren't cars. I feel I could do a better job. And one example was Skull Island. I was so happy to get that chance to do Skull Island because there was no cars in it, and I was able to shoot things that were different. And so I enjoyed that. I also love doing things other than serious, Fast and Furious. I've done Murder Mystery, which is a comedy. I've done horror movies. So I really like bouncing around because each one, gives you a chance to get creative, to really get your creative juices going. You don't get stuck in a certain place where you just get kind of complacent and stuff. So I like doing different genres. I like doing things that are sometimes spectacular and sometimes just simple chases, things that are more about the character and what's going on than what's happening around him. So that's always a challenge for me. And I love, directors that will challenge me, but for a reason. I'll always fight for what I believe in, but I have a reason for it. So if I fight for something, I see a certain sequence, something that I think is important, or a certain piece of something, I'll give them a reason. I'll say, and I always do it for the audience. My number one thing that I always do is for the audience. If I feel the audience is going to get something out of it, if it's going to inspire them, it's going to make them remember it, I fight for it. It could be a medium ochre stunt. It could be something spectacular. It could be something that is simple to do or something that's complicated. But I always think of the audience's end result, and that's what I fight for the most.
And what are you working on right now, Spiro?
I'm waiting for the Fast 11 script to come out. So we're all anxious. That's taken a while. So we're all been very anxious for that. So to fill in the time before that, I love doing Bollywood movies. And so I just did a Bollywood movie called War II. They did the first one called War I. I didn't work on that, but I worked on the new one called War II. That was really exciting. And I'm hoping to work with Shahrukh Khan. He's my favorite, one of my favorite actors of all time, American or Bollywood. But he's the big Bollywood star, one of the greatest of all time. And I might be working on King, his new movie that he's doing. So I'm hoping to work with him again, Shahrukh Khan. He's an amazing person until Fast gets going again.
Tell us about your most memorable film.
I have one or two as a stuntman. I'll start with that, and then I'll go with as an action director. As a stuntman, one of my two favorites or three favorites was Goonies. Goonies was the reason that's a special one in my heart was because when I first got called on it, there was a stunt that back at the time when we did Goonies back in the 80s, I think it was, people could do backflips and double backs, but people couldn't do a backflip going forward. That was something that really hadn't been done yet, where it's called a gainer on the ground. And there was a stunt in there that kind of needed that, where somebody is going forward, and as he's going forward, he does a backflip. And it had to be done. It was difficult because it had to be done on a log with a waterfall falling down next to you, water splashing all over. You had a flashlight and a gun, in each hand. You're balancing yourself on a log, and you're going forward, and you're wearing these glasses that the water's getting in front of, and you have to do a flip and land on the log and not fall off the log. So they knew that I was one of the few people that could do that kind of a gag, let alone do it under those conditions. So I was hired for one day, and I was excited about it. And Richard Donner was directing, but in this case, they ended up doing it on second unit. But back then, the second unit director on Goonies was Spielberg. So that ended up being like, oh my God, Spielberg's going to direct me on this stunt. And I remember to myself, like, oh my God, he's going to want me to do it 20 times. This is going to be, how am I going to do it? And I remember I went to do it. I did it, roll camera, did it. He had one camera on it, which is amazing, and I did the gag, and I'm like, okay, I got up. I thought it went really well, but okay, I guess I could try to do better, and I went to see about going to back to number one, and somebody taps me on the shoulder, and I look over, and Spielberg gives me a 2 thumbs up and walks off. And I'm like, oh my God, that was it. He was happy, and we're done. And so, and then they kept me on the whole rest of the movie. So not only because that's a classic, not only because, obviously it was a stunt that really, people weren't able to do that kind of a stunt back then. So it was a unique stunt, Spielberg directing, and a classic show. And I also got to stay on the whole movie because of that one, because it worked out so well. So that was a great one. Midnight Run, doubling De Niro. I got a chance of a lifetime to do that. There was 2 of us on that, and I was one of the main doubles for him. And also Back to the Future. I got to double. I'm a little bit too big for Michael J. Fox, but the guy that was doing the movie, part of the movie, had me do some of the big stunts on it for him. So I got to do a little bit on that, not the whole movie, but I got to be on a classic with him. So that, as a stuntman, were my some of my most memorable ones. I don't know if you need to know about as an action director, but that's what I was, a stuntman.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And what do you consider your most memorable or your greatest accomplishments?
I would have to say a couple real quickly. It would be the first Fast. It was a very big uphill for me to get the Fast and Furious. That's the biggest franchise Universal has. It's their biggest money makers. And they didn't want me to do, the director saw my footage and believed in me. He said, this is the guy I want. But the studio, which I don't blame, said, we're not going to put our biggest franchise, that our number one thing that supports our studio, and give half the movie to direct the action to somebody, some kid that we don't really know that well. But he believed in me, and the director just did everything he could to make the studio give in, and they did. And the sequence that I shot was that vault sequence that to this day is one of my proudest sequences that I've ever done. It holds itself really well. People use that as an example to action sequences, and we did it practical. The sequence is 12 minutes long, and there's only about 15 seconds of a fake vault in the whole sequence. So out of 12 minutes, almost 98% of it is all real vault, real sequence. And so that is one of the proudest. And then Fast 7, because of Paul Walker. Not only was that one of the highest action films I've done, with really big action, variety of action that I got to direct, but losing Paul on that movie was so sad. But knowing that, that I was part of his last movie will always be in my heart. And so that was very, very tough. Matter of fact, when he died and they had the special red pages, they had a new ending, what they were going to do. I remember, even though I wasn't involved with the last part of it, but I didn't even want to read it. I remember people were asking me, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? So for two reasons, I wanted to just go to the screen, go to the premiere and just, be surprised by it. And I also didn't want to have to tell people I can't tell them. So that was a memorable moment. What a great man.
Yeah, amazing. And what do you consider your greatest career challenges?
It's almost every movie. I have to think of it, but it's trying to get the producers to give you the time and the money to give you your vision, because they never have enough. There's never enough time and in a budget. So how do I convince them to give me more than they already had, to risk it, and it happens all the time. It could be a small movie, and it could be, Fast and Furious, over $200 million to make a Fast, and I still have a hard time getting even an extra day or whatever to shoot on those movies. So the challenges is, and it's hard, is to get them to just give me my box. Once they give me a box, whatever the days, whatever the amount of time it is, I just want that box, and then let me mold it into what I believe would be what the director wants. So the biggest challenge is give me the box, and then let me and the director do what we got to do.
Yeah.
Now, I've had other challenges, like on Vantage Point, one of my favorite sequences I've directed. There was a movie called Vantage Point, where the cars are racing through the streets at high speeds, swerving and missing. And the idea is people are in chaos running through the streets. So back then, we didn't have the luxury of having all these visual effects and special adding people. So we had to have hundreds of people in the streets where these cars are racing and sliding and spinning. And yes, we had it in stages where we had stunt people that we knew were top stunt people from the States. Then we had local stunt people that were good, but were also not as experienced. And then we had background, and they had to still be in there. And we had to find a way to thread these cars through that. And if you ever see that sequence, it's one of my favorites. All the people, everything was real. And that was challenging, to keep everybody safe and still make it look on the edge of your seat.
Where do you hope to be in the next 5 years, Spiro?
In a heated pool and jacuzzi, trying to make my old injuries feel better. I'm very lucky. All the stunts I've done, I remember I started as 10 years old. I started falling and jumping at 10. So I've been doing that for over 50 years. My body has been, taking its toll, and I'm lucky. I have had knee surgeries and things, but overall, knock on wood, I'm luckier than a lot of guys my age that, are suffering a lot more. So in the future, I have a beautiful wife and partner, and we have the two most beautiful dogs. They are our life, Coco and Chloe, and Anastasia, my wife. And we love the time that we have together. We just love it, love it, love it. And so I want to spend is I would love to get a project every maybe year and a half or something and have fun with it, just to keep my creative juices and be able and be able to take my family goes everywhere with me. So they have to be projects that, you know, we could take the dogs, and there are service dogs with us, so they can go pretty much almost anywhere. So that would be my future, is to do a project every year and a half or so, and be with my family and have my friends. I play Call of Duty too every twice a week. The old version from 20 years old from Vantage Point. Speaking of Vantage Point, we started playing the Call of Duty back then, and we still play it twice a week. We started playing. We each had a TV, and we would have like these 8 television sets in my hotel room back at Vantage Point. And every night, instead of going out partying or going out to dinner, we'd come to my room and we'd play Call of Duty and laugh and have room service and have fun every single night. So I said to myself when I got home, it's so rare to be able to laugh and have a great time so often in life. I go, it doesn't have to end. So I had my home theater guy set up. So then I would have 16 televisions and Xboxes set up in my house. And then we would have people come twice a week. We just did it last night. That's why I'm a little tired and baggy eyes. But twice a week, we play Call of Duty. But the original one, the one that we played from 20 years ago, we still play. And we have kids that are from 8 years old or younger, or 5, all the way to people in their 80s. Because the game is so old, you don't have to be this great gamer, because we're not great gamers. We can have gamers and we can have us playing and we can have fun together. So that's the way I'd like to end my life, is with our beautiful dogs, my wife, and my friends.
Can you tell us about your heritage?
Yes, I am a Greek. Both my parents, mom and dad, were born in Greece. And what's unique about my parents is, as you can see, my dad was very, very open. Like I said, he would be about free. I mean, he let me see Shaft, an R-rated movie, and all the money he saved up for 6 months went to waste, so that he believed that I needed to see Shaft at that moment. And we saw it all day long, 3.5 times. So my dad, being somebody that's very free and understanding about life, to my mother, who was raised on the side of a village in the hills in Greece. All right. She was so overly strict. If I didn't have my hands folded and she caught me in class without my hands like this, listening to the teacher, she'd come in and slap me in front of the class. So my mom was very strict, beat me, because she didn't want me to be with anybody but Greeks. And God bless her, she's still alive. She's 100 years old, and we just celebrated her 100th birthday. And she's still very protective, still yells at me if I don't eat right, if I'm not doing the right things. So she's still the same. My dad's not here, but he helped me fulfill my dream. So I owe my parents, because I had to find a middle. And so, being Greek, you know how crazy that is, like Italians and so many other, cultures in this world. But I had to find my own middle, and but I still have my habits from my parents. So I still drive people crazy.
And how would you like Spiro Razatos to be remembered?
What I do is great, because it'll be there forever. People are going to watch these movies. I've been lucky, from, like I said, from Back to the Future to the Fast and Furious to the Marvel shows, so those will be watched in years to come. So my work is cemented for people to see. They're never going to know who did that. I guess the way I want to be remembered is, I hope people will see my work in the future, and it'll bring enjoyment. It'll make them forget if they're having a tough time. It'll make them smile and be entertained and be excited. They're never going to know who did it, but I want that to still be effective in the years that I'm gone.
What have I missed, Spiro? Anything you want to pitch or talk about?
I wanted to give a shout out to my dad, like I said, which I have. Somebody that, again, he slept in a basement in a mattress and was blind and had polio, and he was in the Navy, and his ship was hit by a torpedo and he survived. Somebody like that was pretty much just nobody really gave him any credit. but he is my inspiration. He was an outcast to the Greek community. And, the police try to stop me. The courts try to take him away from me because they thought that he was such a bad person for what I was doing. And he literally believed in me and sacrificed everything for me and my mother, which tried to stop me. But that was only because she didn't know. Her love was so strong that she thought she was protecting me. But I had to find a way to make her believe in me. So I just want to give a shout out, obviously, to my mother and father and the stunt community, the stunt people that have risked their lives, the ones that have been hurt or lost because of it. I want to give a hat to them and God bless our community, because it's not an easy community. If we're not risking our lives, if we're not taking care of our injuries, if we're not waiting for our next job that we don't know when it's going to be there, there's just so many obstacles that we have in our career that people don't realize that we have to go through. So I just want to say, that I love and respect all the stunt people and what they've had to do.
You're an interesting guy, Spiro.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
And thank you for the conversation.
Of course, you guys. Good luck, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And you will be happy too.